The sun has barely risen in Bradbury, California. The streets are quiet and deserted. Gradually, the town just outside Los Angeles is bathed in golden light. Only in the driveway of a luxurious mansion in the neighborhood is there chaos. Two dead people lie there. Trudy Thompson and her husband Mickey, who broke records and pushed boundaries in the world of motorsports. Years ago, he made headlines for his daring sporting exploits. The next day, his name will be on all the front pages again. This time as the victim in an inconceivable double murder. Over the course of his career, Mickey Thompson set so many records that it would be impossible to list them all here. There are more than 395. Most of them were in motorsports, and most of them were set by chance. Mickey Thompson was a trained printer who tinkered with cars and motorcycles as a hobby. He made a name for himself with his own inventions and metal constructions, which he tested himself. With his tuning, he repeatedly pushed cars to speeds and distances that were previously considered unthinkable. In 1960, he became the fastest man on four wheels. He was the first person in the world to reach 654 kilometers per hour in his car. Perhaps a comparison to illustrate this. High-speed trains reach speeds of around 350 kilometers per hour. After this feat, Mickey Thompson became an absolute star in the motor world. But he didn't stop there. Instead, continually outdoing himself with faster, newer, crazier cars and ideas. When you look at some extreme athletes, you sometimes get the feeling that something is bound to go wrong at some point. And that's exactly what happened to Mickey. In the mid-70s, he had a serious accident with a speedboat. He broke several vertebrae and was left paralyzed from the waist down. The doctors gave him no hope of ever walking again. But Mickey defied all the statistics, just as he had done on the racetrack. With the support of his wife Trudy, he managed to learn to walk again. The couple lived together in California in a suburb of Los Angeles. Mickey had been married before, but the marriage ended in divorce in the late 60s. He met Trudy when she was working as a secretary for a motorsport magazine. It was love at first sight for both of them. Mickey's son from his first marriage also likes his father's new wife very much. The family relationships are relaxed and good. After his active career, Mickey is even more than good at business. In the 1980s, he ran his own racetrack and a marketing agency specializing in motocross events. Trudy also worked in his company, and both worked really hard, basically from morning to night. Sometimes they had 18-hour days. But their efforts paid off and they were able to lead a more than comfortable life. What's more, their job involved doing what they enjoyed most. But success also brings envy and resentment. Not everyone is happy for the racer's big money, especially since Mickey is not exactly a born businessman. In a television report from the 1980s, it is said that he runs his business the way he races on the track, i.e., straight down the middle, without paying much attention to conventions. Mickey is also aware of this. He even expresses his fear to family members that something bad could happen. He is also said to have received repeated death threats. However, Mickey is more concerned about his wife Trudy than himself. The idea that something might happen to her because of his business seems to be the worst possible scenario for him. Unfortunately, Mickey Thompson's fears proved to be justified. On the morning of March 16, 1988, shots ring out in the Californian suburb of Bradbury. Two people lose their lives on the Thompson property. When the police arrive at the Thompsons' house, the situation is unfortunately clear at first glance. A body lies directly at the driveway of the house. It is Trudy Thompson, lying face down. She's bleeding heavily from a gunshot wound. Just a few meters further, in front of one of the garages, lies Mickey Thompson, also lifeless. There is nothing that can be done for either of them. 41-year-old Trudy and 59-year-old Mickey have been shot. on their own property at 6 a.m. Empty bullet casings and a stun gun lie around the Thompsons' bodies. The stun gun most likely does not belong to the Thompsons. At least, no one in their circle knows that they owned one. At first, robbery and murder seem the obvious conclusion. However, the perpetrator left behind a large amount of cash and Trudy's jewelry. The accessories Trudy was wearing when she died are worth more than $70,000 alone. A thief would certainly not have passed up such a haul. It therefore quickly becomes clear to the police that this must be a personal matter. The neighbor next door heard the shots. First, several shots were fired. Then there was complete silence for 10 to 15 seconds. Then Mickey Thompson was heard shouting not to hurt his wife. This was followed by another series of shots. And then silence again. The neighbor looked out of the window and is certain he saw the perpetrators. Not one, but two. Two black men had gained access to the Thompsons' property and shot the couple. The perpetrators then fled on bicycles. The neighbor can describe both men, who are said to have been between 20 and 30 years old, very well, so that composite sketches can be made. Other neighbors also confirm having seen the two men, and witness interviews provide even more clues. Just days before the double murder, a suspicious car was seen in the neighborhood. A blue-green Chevy, conspicuously parked in front of the Thompsons' house. A black man was sitting in the passenger seat, while the driver of the car was white. The two men are said to have looked at the race car driver's house for a conspicuously long time. One of them even had binoculars with him to spy on the property. When they noticed that a neighbor was watching them, the car drove away quickly. Trudy and Mickey had a strict routine. They left their house at 6 a.m. almost every morning. A perpetrator could have figured this out after just a few days of observation. This also means that the crime was thoroughly prepared and thought out. The police are certain that a professional was at work here. But a few things are somehow amateurish. They rode a bicycle to the scene of a planned double murder, left the stun gun behind, and did not use silencers. So the neighbors heard the shots loud and clear and became aware of the perpetrators. The police theorized that the plan may have been different, that the perpetrators wanted to overpower the Thompsons with the stun gun and kidnap them. It's clear that the couple was to be murdered, but perhaps at a different location where the shots would not have been heard. But something went wrong, or one of the perpetrators lost their nerve. So the truth lies somewhere between a professional and an amateur murder. The crime was certainly planned with some care, but probably not by the two shooters themselves. Investigators believe that the two men were hired so that another person could settle an open score with Mickey. The entire U.S. motorsport scene is shocked by the double murder. The Thompson family offers a reward of $260,000. Despite this huge sum, no clues are forthcoming at first. The case is featured on Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted, among other programs. The broadcast proves successful, with investigators receiving hundreds of tips. One of them comes from a woman who introduces herself as the ex-girlfriend of Mickey's business partner, Michael Goodwin. She says that she and Michael once watched a television program about true crime cases together. During the program, Michael told her that he was also planning a murder, namely that of his former business partner, Mickey Thompson. However, he would never be caught because he was simply too clever for that. That's a very confident statement, especially when you share it with someone else and they go to the police with it. Investigators are already looking into Michael Goodwin because Michael and Mickey had a business dispute shortly before the Thompsons were murdered. Michael had previously joined Mickey's business. On paper, the business relationship between the two should have been quite fruitful. Mickey brings his athletic expertise as a race car driver to the table, and Michael has made a name for himself as a concert promoter and has been organizing a motorcycle show called Supercross, which takes place in stadiums for several years. So, in theory, it's the perfect business match. However, Michael Goodwin himself describes it somewhat differently. He says it was pure hell from day one. And Mickey agrees. At first, it all looks like misunderstandings, but recently the friction has become more serious. This is because Mickey's company's accounting department could not explain where several $1,000s from Mickey's investments had gone. Michael was of the opinion that this was none of Mickey's business. After all, Mickey had given him power of attorney over all business matters, and he should not interfere in anything he knew nothing about. However, a court saw things differently. Mickey called in the authorities because he and the accounting department believed that Michael had embezzled money from the company, and this was confirmed by the court. Mickey was proven right, and Michael was ultimately ordered to repay $514,000 to his business partner. But Michael didn't even think about writing a check. Instead, he filed for bankruptcy and appealed the court ruling. The dispute went back and forth for 2 years before the ruling in Mickey's favor was upheld, and that was reportedly only weeks before the double murder of Trudy and Mickey. Mickey's family is certain that Michael Goodwin is behind the murder. His sister Colleen, in particular, is convinced that Michael is the perpetrator. She just can't prove it. But Colleen is persistent, or, as one of the investigators in the Thompson case says, a woman you don't want to mess with. This statement is by no means meant maliciously, on the contrary. Mickey's sister has already solved a murder case. Her own son was killed by 2 of his business partners. Because the police were not making any progress, Colleen took matters into her own hands and presented the police with all the necessary details and a secretly recorded confession. So it's clear that someone like her won't stop pursuing the murder of her brother and his wife, Trudy, even if Colleen has to wait longer this time. Because although Michael Goodwin has the necessary motive and even implicitly announced Mickey's murder to his ex, there is no evidence. The police admit that Goodwin is the #1 suspect, but they cannot arrest him. So Michael Goodwin can continue to live his life normally, unmolested for the time being. Well, not entirely unmolested. The suspicion against him is not only shared by the Thompson family and the police. His wife files for divorce, and numerous acquaintances from the motorsport scene turn their backs on Goodwin. He therefore describes himself as the 3rd victim in the Thompson double murder case. As a self-proclaimed 3rd victim, unlike the dead Thompsons, he's able to slip away. 5 months after the murder, he leaves the US on his yacht and sails to the Caribbean, where he lives on his boat from then on. After a few years, he returns to the US, where his life continues to go downhill. He is convicted of other financial frauds. After a 30-month prison sentence, nothing remains of his former fortune, and he lives with his father in a trailer. However, he has not yet reached rock bottom. That comes in the early 2000s, when new witnesses in the Mickey Thompson case come forward to the police. The investigation against Michael then picks up speed again. Now there are several witnesses who say that Michael told them he wanted to kill Mickey. In the end, there will be a total of 15. The police decide to revisit one of the old leads. During a confrontation, the witness who saw the blue-green Chevy in the neighborhood in the days before the Thompsons' murder is invited to identify the driver of the car from a lineup. Without having to think too much about it, he points to one of the men presented to him. It is Michael Goodwin. Michael and his lawyer object. The lawyer declares the available evidence to be ridiculous. Michael says he is the victim of a political conspiracy by the police and Mickey's sister Colleen, who just wants to see him behind bars. His only argument for this is that Colleen is the mayor of a medium-sized community in California. However, she never seems to have had any ambitions beyond local politics. Michael Goodwin can never really explain what this has to do with the murder case. Nevertheless, this is his defense strategy in the trial. The proceedings last a good 6 weeks, and in the end, the 12-member jury reaches a unanimous decision. In August 2007, Michael Goodwin is sentenced to 2 life sentences. This is more than 18 years after the murder of Trudy and Mickey Thompson. For the bereaved families of the 2 victims, this confirms what they had feared from the beginning. However, only one person has been convicted. The 2 shooters who were seen by witnesses at the scene of the crime have not been caught to this day. Michael Goodwin may have been convicted as the mastermind, but he is only one of 3 perpetrators in this case. 2 others got away. Michael Goodwin continues to deny that he is responsible for the murder of Trudy and Mickey Thompson. In fact, there is no hard evidence, no DNA traces, no recordings, nothing that places him at the scene of the crime at the time of the murder, and so on. But after more than a decade and a half of investigation, he is also the only person in this case who had a motive to murder the Thompsons. Goodwin last attempted to appeal his conviction in 2015. However, the appeal was unanimously rejected. Michael Goodwin must now be approaching 80. He's still in prison. He has never revealed the names of the two shooters. To do so, he would first have to admit his guilt. And he refuses to do that to this day. It's always shocking to see how many of these murder cases are ultimately about money. And Trudy was also dragged into this. She worked for Mickey, but she was never the one who made the deals with Michael Goodwin. She was simply murdered because she was married to Mickey. That brings us to the end of today's video. Feel free to share your thoughts on the case in the comments. Thank you for watching. I wish you a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching the video, and hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, ciao everyone.